Hey everybody, welcome to this presentation for Learn Worlds of Learning 2021 Summit. My name is Todd Getts. My wife Leah Ray and I are founders and owners of digitaltrailblazer.com, and in this training we are going to give you our 7-figure webinar blueprint. This is a 5-step webinar script that will turn your online course or coaching program into a virtual ATM machine. And what I mean by that is that you'll be able to take $1 in ad spend and turn that into $2, $3, $4, $5 back in return, or even more. This right here that you're looking at is just an example of one of our months doing live webinars once a week. And so over here on the left-hand side, you can see how much we spent in ads. And then over here on the right-hand side, you can see how much we made in sales and then our profit for each week. And so just doing one webinar a week, we're able to produce $30,000 to $40,000 per month in revenue. And that's with doing live webinars. When you take this webinar script and then you put it in an automated webinar system, that's when you're able to scale up your business to 6 figures plus per month in sales. Now, some of you listening to this training right now may already know us, you might be familiar with us, but for those of you who don't know who we are, maybe you're wondering, well, why should we even listen to you? Well, like I said, Leah and I are the founders and owners of digitaltrailblazer.com. We are 7-figure business owners. We're award-winning marketers. We've taught thousands of others on how to build and market their businesses online. We've done this both from behind the computer, like you're seeing right now, and from on stage. And this webinar script that I'm about to reveal to you today, it will work for pretty much anything. We've used this to create multiple 7 figures in income in things like affiliate marketing and network marketing, and also to sell physical products and e-commerce. But where this webinar script has really produced the most income for us has been in selling online courses and our own coaching programs. And from the very first month that we were selling an online course, this was our very first month selling our very first online course, we were producing thousands of dollars per week in sales. And so this was our very first month. This was a couple months after that, we'd scaled up to $20,000 a month. And then a couple months after that, $35,000 to $40,000 per month. And this was all just doing live webinars once a week. So we basically worked for a couple hours every week to produce this type of income. The next month after this, when we took that same webinar presentation and then put it into an automated webinar system where we could drive traffic to our webinar presentation 24/7, that's when we started scaling up to $84,000 in a single month, $76,000 in a single month, $190,000 in a single month in sales. And again, this is being able to put $1 into ads and getting $2, $3, $4, even $5 or more back out in sales. And that's what we mean by turning your online course or coaching program into a virtual sales machine. And not only has this worked for us, but this also works for the clients that come to us that we work with. For example, Adrienne here, who came to us to help launch her very first course, her very first webinar promoting her course, she had a 10% conversion rate, which translated into $22,000 in sales in her very first month selling her course. Suresh here on the other side of your screen, he's somebody that had already launched a course, he'd already been selling it, but he was having problems actually turning around a profit. He would actually spend more money in ads than what he was bringing in sales. And so when we took a look at what he was doing, we were able to give him some advice to improve his webinar. And the very next presentation he gave, he was instantly in profits. He was basically able to take $1,800 in cold traffic ads and turn around and turn that into $4,200 in sales immediately. So he's able to put $1 in and get over $2 back out every time he runs a webinar. So what is this webinar script? What is the webinar blueprint that you need to use that will sell your course like clockwork over and over and over? There's 5 main parts to this, okay? And it's very simple. It's not very complicated once you understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so I'm going to give you the formula here. I'm going to give you the blueprint. I'm going to show you all of the parts that need to go into an effective webinar for your course or coaching program. And then after I give you the blueprint, I'm going to show you how this would work in a real life situation. So we're going to go through a real life example of how you could implement this with a real product. So the first step, okay, the first thing that you need to do as soon as people get on your webinar is you need to hook them. Okay, you need to hook them with a big, bold promise. And this is one of the things that so many people do wrong, especially on live webinars, is that they'll start the webinar on time and then they'll sit there and they'll do a sound check, they'll welcome people on, and they'll talk about how excited they are to have everybody join, and they need to say hi to everybody that's on there, and then they'll do some small talk and talk about the weather or whatever. And As you're doing this, the longer you draw out all of that fluff at the beginning, and the longer you make people wait to actually get to anything that they're interested in, the more and more people you're going to lose within those first few minutes of your webinar. And if you ever study the retention graph of your webinars, if you have that kind of data available to you, and when you can see when people joined and when they jumped off, what you'll see is that most people's webinars have a huge spike at the very beginning of the webinar where everybody has jumped on, and then it will quickly nosedive within the first 3 to 5 minutes where people are just leaving because they become disinterested, because it's just taking too long to get to any content that they actually want. And so in order to minimize that, in order to get people on your webinar and keep them there so that they don't leave, you need to hook them right away with a big, bold promise. So just like I did at the very beginning of this training, where I said, hey everybody, my name is Todd, I'm from digitaltrailblazer.com, and in this training you're going to learn, bang, okay? Hit them with the big bold promise, and then if you have a testimonial or a screenshot that you can show that emphasizes what you're about to learn, that emphasizes the result that they can achieve, you want to do that as well, okay? Because that is what's going to hold their attention, and that is what's going to make them want to stick around for the rest of your training, okay? So very first thing, hit them with a big, bold promise as soon as they jump on and skip all of the fluff. The next thing that you need to do is to tell your story of how you discovered this method to achieve this result. Now, I know a lot of people who've probably been on webinars before, this is your least favorite part, right? This is the part where if you've ever been tempted to leave a webinar, this is probably the point where you leave, is where people start talking about themselves and their lives and their business and blah, 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 blah. And it's just really boring. And if people are going to complain about your training, this is usually the part where they're going to start making complaints, where you'll start seeing things come through the chat roll where they're saying, hey, get to the point. Why do all these trainers always have to tell their entire life story before they actually get to any content? And the reason for that is because most people do this wrong. There is a major point to telling your story at the beginning of your webinar. There's actually two major things that you want to be able to do with your story. Most people are only aware of one thing that they need to do, which is to be relatable. Okay, that's what most people are trying to do with their story, is to show their audience how they used to be just like them or how they are relatable to them. And so that's why you'll hear a lot of people when they're on the webinars, they'll talk about their family, they'll talk about their life, they'll talk about their job, they'll talk about their favorite color or whatever. And it's just boring stuff that nobody really cares about. And the thing is that yes, you want to be relatable, but you also need your story to drive a narrative. And that narrative is not just, I used to be like you, but it is also that I had the same goal as you and I ran into the same problems that you ran into, but then I discovered this method and now I achieved this goal and now this is what my life is like. If you want to achieve this goal, you need to implement this method as well, right? You need to do what I did if you want to achieve the goal that I've achieved, okay? That's the point of your story. And if you're not driving home that point, then you're completely missing the point of telling your story at the beginning, okay? It's not just to be relatable. It's to drive home that narrative that if you want this result, you need to do what I did. So step 2 is telling your story. And the thing is that these first two steps, okay, these first two steps in this webinar script, they need to take no longer than about 12 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes of your webinar, maybe as much as 15 minutes, but then it's getting a little bit lengthy. You want to finish up your story by about 12 minutes in, and then get to the actual content where we introduce your method, your one big thing, before that 15-minute mark. And so this is the third step in this webinar script, is to introduce your method, or what we call the one big thing. This is the method that you use to achieve the results that you're promising. And this is not to be confused with your offer. Okay, there's a big difference between what we call your method versus your offer. And we're going to go through that in just a bit here in the next couple slides, because it's really important to learn this distinction. For example, if I was teaching basketball players how to slam dunk, okay, if that's the goal that I'm helping basketball players to achieve, is to increase their vertical leap so that they can slam dunk, my method would be something like training your fast twitch muscles so that you can jump higher. Okay, that might be my method. That's how I help people to achieve that result of being able to jump higher and slam dunk. My method is not my offer. Okay, my offer would be like the name of my course or my program. There are two major things that you need to be able to sell on your webinar. Okay, number one is your method, and then number two is your offer. And you need to sell them in that order. Okay, you need to convince people of your method first before they will ever be interested in joining your program or buying your offer. In other words, nobody's going to be interested in buying my course to help you to slam dunk if they aren't convinced that training your fast twitch muscles is going to be effective in helping them to achieve that goal. So I first need to teach them about what your fast twitch muscles are, why they help you to increase your vertical leaps so effectively, and why that method works better than some other method that they might be trying. For example, doing just generic strength training and weightlifting. Right? I need to convince them that training your fast twitch muscles is the way to achieve this goal. And if you want the best program to learn how to train your fast twitch muscles, then you need to buy my course. Okay, that's what we're doing here. So we first convince people of this method. After they're convinced that this method will work for them, then we introduce them to your offer at the end. Okay, so that's the one big thing. We give them the bird's eye view of what your method is and why it works. The next section of your webinar is we go through what we call the secrets or the false beliefs. So these are going to be either the objections, the false beliefs, the obstacles, the roadblocks that people have to believing that your method will work for them. So for example, if I say that you need to train your fast twitch muscles in order to get the explosive vertical leap that you need to slam dunk, some people may think to themselves, well, it doesn't matter because I'm just too short, right? I'm too short to be able to slam dunk. And so one of the false beliefs I'm going to have to address is what do you do if you think you're too short, right? What if you're only 5'5"? What if you're only, 5'3"? Will this method still work for you? Okay, so that's the first thing that I would train on is that yes, even if you're as short as 5'3", this method will work for you, and here's why. So that's the first secret I'm going to train on is how to slam dunk even if you're short. And then secret number 2 would be another false belief or another objection or roadblock that people have to believing that this method will work for them. So maybe something else people might believe is that maybe they just lack the natural athletic ability to be able to have that type of explosive leap that they could even slam dunk or even be competitive in basketball, even if they did do this training. And so there again, I would have to demonstrate that with this method, even if you're not really a naturally gifted athlete, if you're clumsy, if you're just uncoordinated, right, if you're kind of scrawny, that this method will still work for you if you implement it the right way. Okay, so that would be the second thing that I train on. And then I could add a third one or a fourth one or however many I need until I've overcome all of those false beliefs or objections. And so what we're doing here, as we preemptively knock down these objections, more and more people are starting to believe that this method that you teach is going to work for them, that it will help them to achieve that goal of being able to slam dunk a basketball or to lose weight or to build a business or whatever it is. And so it's at that point, after we've knocked down all of these objections, that we then introduce your offer. We give them the program that will teach them step by step how to actually implement what we just taught them. Okay, and so this is another really important distinction, is that in your webinar, you want to give them the what, but the actual how is what they have to purchase your program for. Okay, they learn what you do during the webinar, and they will learn how to do it once they join your program. And again, this is one of the things that so many people struggle with, is that they treat their webinars like it should just be an informational training. And I think they do that because there's this idea out there that if you just provide enough value, right? If you just provide some great training and it's jam-packed with value, that people will be so appreciative that they will just naturally want to buy your course or your coaching program. And that is just not true. If you focus on just providing great training and you pack as much information as possible into your webinar, and you're not consciously thinking about proving your method and then knocking down any objections that people have, what's going to happen is that, yeah, people will be very informed, but they will still be unconvinced. Okay, they will be overwhelmed with information and still have a bunch of questions as to whether it will really work for them. And so now you're in a situation where not only are people just not convinced that this will really work for them, but they're also in a position where they think that they have all the information they need to implement this. And even if they were interested in buying, they probably won't, because why would you pay for something that you just got for free? So it's very important that when you are going through your webinar, that you keep this in mind, that your goal is not necessarily to teach and to train and to give all the information possible, but rather your main goal here is to inspire people that your method that you teach in your program will work for them. Okay, that is what drives sales, is belief. When people believe that your method, that what you teach in your program is going to work for them, that it will help them to actually achieve the goal that they want to achieve, that is when they take their credit cards out and they buy. Now, naturally, there's going to be some training that takes place within that. We do need to teach people what the method is. We do need to teach people about why it works in certain situations. And so they're getting good information, but we are structuring it in a very specific way, an intentional way, where we are knocking down any objections or false beliefs that they might have that prevent them from believing that your program will actually work for them. Now, like I mentioned before, there's a huge difference between your method versus your offer. And you need to be able to make this distinction in order for this to work. Typically, when people get this wrong, it's when they confuse their offer for their method. And so what happens during a webinar is that people start training on why their offer is such a great program, rather than why their method will work for them. And when you start training on why your offer is such a great program, that's when people start feeling like they're just being sold to the whole time. Okay, so if you get a bunch of people complaining that, oh, this is just one big long sales pitch, it's probably because you're confusing your offer with your method. Because when you train on your method and then you don't even mention your offer until step 5, that's when people feel like they got value. That's when they feel like they learned something and now they're in a place where they're ready to buy. Is when you train on your method first and you convince people that your method will work for them. Like I mentioned before, you must sell people on your method first. And then you'll be able to sell your offer after you've convinced them of your method. And your method is basically just a one-sentence explanation of what you do to help people achieve their results. Okay, this is the process or the vehicle that you use to help them achieve their results. So for example, if my offer helps children to read above their grade level, okay, that's the goal that it helps them to achieve. The method I use to help them to achieve that might be something like educational songs and games. Okay, that would be my method versus my offer, which would be like the name of my program. Another example might be like in real estate investing. If I help people to make money through real estate investing, and that's a goal I help people to achieve, the method that I help them to achieve that by might be something like flipping contracts. Okay, so my method is flipping contracts, and then my offer is the program that teaches them how to do that. Okay, hopefully that is making sense to you. You should be able to explain your method in a few words or at least less than one sentence. It shouldn't take you that long to describe what your method is. And again, like I mentioned before, your offer is the way or the system that shows someone how to actually learn and implement the method. So if I help basketball players to jump higher so that they can slam dunk, my method would be through training your fast twitch muscles. And then my offer would be the 90-day dunk plan or something like that, right? That would be my offer. That would be the name of my program. And that's going to show them step by step the exercises that they need to do, how to do the exercises, the training schedule you need to be on, the equipment that you should be using, and all that stuff, right? Your workout plan and everything. Okay, that's the system. That's the vehicle that will help them to achieve the result that we're promising. So one thing that people will often say when they try to think about what their method is that, I teach a fully comprehensive program. We don't just focus on one little thing. It's fully comprehensive and it covers everything that has to do with losing weight, or it covers everything that has to do with investing in real estate, or it covers everything that has to do with building a business online. And what you need to understand is that, yes, your program will teach many things and it may be very comprehensive, but you need to find that one defining feature that you can pull out and put a spotlight on to differentiate yourself from other people's programs and other people's methods. So for example, if we were in the weight loss or fitness niche, I could say that, yeah, I have a weight loss program that's fully comprehensive. We have a diet plan that's customized to your age and to your gender and to your body type. And we have a workout plan that you can do at home that you don't even need to go to the gym for. And we don't just have this one little gimmick that we do that gets you results, right? It's this full comprehensive program. And the thing that you need to understand is that, yes, that may be true, but when you're taking your program and you're comparing it to something else that your target audience may have tried before, or you're comparing it to some other fad or some other common knowledge that's out there, what's the one thing that you can pull out that you can say, hey, this is one defining feature that's going to be different from those other programs that make this more effective? So, for example, I might say that, yeah, I have a fully comprehensive weight loss and fitness plan, but the one thing that we do that's different from what people have probably heard from before or that they maybe have tried in the past is that we focus on a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting, right? Those are the two things that we focus on. And that's different from other programs because other programs may focus on cardio exercise, or they may focus on calorie restriction, or they may focus on a low-fat diet. That's the one thing that I would pull out of my program and say that, hey, this is the one defining feature that I can say that it's different from these other ones that make it work better. And again, that's not to say that that's the only thing that you make your program about. We're not saying that your program is just about a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting. But what we are saying is that for the purposes of your marketing, this is what we want to focus on, is the defining feature, the one big thing that we can pull out that differentiates it from other programs out there, right? That makes it better or superior to other things that your target audience has tried before or that they've seen, or other things that have failed in the past. Okay, so let's go through an example of how we would structure a webinar based off of a diet and weight loss offer. Okay, so again, we're starting with the hook. This is step one. And with our hook, we want to hit them with the big, bold promise, and we want to cut out as much of the fluff as possible. So I would say, hey, everybody, my name is Todd Getts. Welcome to this training. Today, I'm going to show you the new diet that I discovered that helped me to lose 50 pounds in only 90 days, helped me to fit in my high school jeans again, and I felt full and satisfied the whole time because it didn't require me to restrict calories. And then along with this, I would probably show some sort of a before and after picture, or some sort of a screenshot with, that I can show like the results that I got, or something else that will kind of show the results that I've gotten. Step two is a story. So for those of you who don't know me, or maybe are meeting me for the first time, I used to be super overweight, and I gained all this weight after I had children, and I just couldn't lose it no matter what I did, until I heard about this new weird kind of diet, and I started following this diet in combination with doing some fasting. And now I'm back to my pre-baby weight, plus I have a lot more energy and mental focus and blah, 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 right? That's a very condensed way of how I might tell the story. And obviously, I'm speaking as if, I was a woman who just had a baby, okay? Not as myself. So I gained a bunch of weight after having children. No matter what I did to try and lose it, I just nothing worked. Then I started a ketogenic diet, and I combined that with some intermittent fasting, and I lost weight super fast. Now I'm back to my pre-baby weight. Plus, I have a bunch more energy and mental focus. And then we go on to describe the one big thing. Okay, what is the method that you use to achieve those results? And so this diet that I was on was called a ketogenic diet. And what I found was that by limiting carbs and putting your body into a state of ketosis, you will actually train your body to start using your extra fat as its primary fuel source. So you actually start burning fat when you're on this diet. And then I also found that when you combine this with intermittent fasting, you can turbocharge your fat loss and lose weight even faster than you were before. And then along with this, as I'm describing what this method is, I'd probably throw up some studies and some scientific facts and some other things that will show proof that this actually works. Okay, so that's your one big thing. And so after we've introduced that, we've introduced your method, now we start breaking down any of those false beliefs, those objections, those roadblocks that people have to believing that this will work for them. Secret number one. People might believe that fats are bad for them. That's why for the past, how many decades, food companies have been rolling out low-fat foods and been marketing them as healthy, is because we have this idea that fats are bad for your health. So my secret number one would be why the right fats are very healthy, and it's carbs that are the bad guy. Carbs are what cause you to gain weight. Okay, so that'd be the first thing that I train on to knock down that objection. And then secret number two, people may have a false belief that in order to lose weight, you have to restrict calories. In other words, you have to burn more calories throughout the day than you actually take in through food. And so to overcome that objection, or to overcome that false belief, I would teach people that restricting calories actually puts your body into starvation mode. And when your body's in starvation mode, it's actually counterproductive to losing weight. And that it's more important to just eat at the right times of the day if you want to lose weight. In other words, do intermittent fasting. And then secret number three, people might have a false belief that any diet that they go on has to have good tasting food, right? That they can't really go on any diet because every diet that they've tried, they couldn't stand because they have poor self-control, they have poor willpower, and if they try to stop themselves from eating their favorite foods like pizza and burgers and things like that, that they just can't stay on that diet. And so in secret number three, this is where I would show people all of the delicious food that they can eat on a ketogenic diet. where you can still have ice cream and you can still have burgers and you can still have pizza and all these other things when you substitute the right ingredients, right? You're using almond flour, you're using stevia instead of sugar, you're using almond milk instead of regular milk, and the taste is right up there with the actual thing. A lot of times you don't even notice the difference in the taste. So that's the third secret I would start training on. And so after I've gone through this whole process, I've knocked down any false belief, any objection that they might have. Now they're in a position where they believe that this diet could actually work for them, that this method will actually help them to lose weight where other things have failed in the past. Now, this is the point where I introduce my program. So if you actually want the step-by-step guide and program that will help you to implement this diet flawlessly, step-by-step, and give you all the tools and all the resources you need to do this and lose more weight in the next 90 days than you've ever lost in your entire life, then you're going to want to check out my Keto Slim 90 program, where you're going to get a full 90-day diet plan complete with weekly grocery shopping lists, a recipe guide and a cookbook, a daily meal plan and eating schedule, my keto supplement guide to help you get in ketosis quickly and stay in ketosis, and blah, 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 blah. They're going to get all this stuff to help them actually implement this plan. They're going to get the full system step by step. So they learn the what during the training, and now with this offer, they're going to get everything that they need to actually implement this in real life. They're going to get the how in this program. Okay, so do you see how that works? Okay, and this is why people don't feel like they're getting sold to the whole time when we follow this script, is because when you look up here, we spent the majority of the webinar educating the people about a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting. Okay, that's all that we're doing here. We don't even mention our program until they've already been convinced that this diet will work for them. Once they're at a point where they're convinced, that's when we introduce the actual program. And by this time, they're either convinced or they're not. Okay, if they're convinced, they're going to stick around, they're going to buy. If they're not convinced, then at least they still feel like they learned something and they weren't being sold to the whole time. Okay, so that in a nutshell is the 7-figure webinar blueprint. And like I said, we've used this over and over and over again to sell every single one of our digital courses, to sell our coaching programs, as well as other things like affiliate marketing offers and software and things like that. Now, if you want to learn more about how to actually create, launch, sell, and scale your online course or coaching business, if you want to learn more about this webinar formula, if you want to learn more about how to actually take that webinar and put it into an automated system, we've got a few resources that you can check out that will help you to do that. One is going to be just going to our website, digitaltrailblazer.com. On that website, you're going to find a bunch of other free resources and training that you can tap into to help you to build and market your online course and coaching program. And the other thing that I would invite you to is to join our free Facebook group, Profitable Course Creators. This is a free group that you can join for anybody who is a course creator or a coach and you want training and support to help you to build and market your online course. We put new trainings in this group at least a couple times a week, and then we also answer any questions that people have whenever they post them in this group. So be sure to join that group if you want further help and support in creating, launching, selling, or scaling your online course or coaching business. And so with that, that's all I have for you today. Once again, my name is Todd Getts from digitaltrailblazer.com. Thank you, everybody, and I'll catch you next time. Take care. Bye.